The crystal palace of Krillos Prime gleamed like a frozen supernova against the vermilion sky. Its impossibly tall spires reached toward the three moons that hung perpetually in the daytime sky, each facet of the structure engineered with mathematical precision, so perfect it seemed almost cruel. Like the empire it represented, the palace was ancient, powerful, and unyielding in its adherence to order. For over 10 millennia, the Kriller Empire had spread across 17 star systems, bringing its particular brand of rigid harmony to each conquered world. Their technological prowess was unmatched in this quadrant of the galaxy. Quantum computing merged with crystalline biotech, ships that could fold space without the messy side effects of traditional warp travel, and medical advances that had long ago conquered mortality for the ruling classes. Today was the convergence of stars, a centennial ceremony of such importance that representatives from all 17 systems and 12 allied species had gathered in the Grand Galactic Hall. The event occurred precisely once every 100 standard years, marking the alignment of Krillos Prime's three moons with the system's binary stars, an astronomical rarity that the ancient Kriller had imbued with religious and political significance. At the heart of this empire stood Queen Seraphina VII, ruler of the crystalline throne for over 3 centuries. Her skin held the characteristic opalescence of high-born Kriller, shifting between blue and violet, depending on her emotional state, currently a serene azure that matched her ceremonial robes. 6 slender arms were adorned with the dynasty bands, crystalline bracelets that had been worn by every ruler since the empire's founding. Her eyes, 3 of them, arranged in a perfect triangle on her elegant face, contained multispectral irises that could perceive wavelengths far beyond human capacity. Queen Seraphina was respected for her wisdom, feared for her absolute power, and renowned for her unflinching adherence to the 1,000-year-old traditions that governed every aspect of Kriller society. Under her rule, the empire had prospered, expanded, and maintained the rigid stability that was the hallmark of Kriller governance. Into this world of precise hierarchy and ancient protocol stepped Earth Federation Ambassador Illyra Vance. At 34 Earth years, she was considered almost laughably young for such an important diplomatic position, but her rapid rise through the diplomatic corps was testament to her sharp intellect and adaptability rather than her adherence to protocol. Where other diplomats excelled at memorizing the exact regulations of alien cultures, Illyra had a gift for improvisation, for finding unexpected solutions when traditional approaches failed. "Your heart rate is elevated," chirped the small AI assistant affixed to her collar. "Nervous, Ambassador?" "Not helping, Chip," Illyra muttered, trying to take in the overwhelming grandeur of the Grand Galactic Hall. The chamber stretched at least a kilometer in each direction, its crystalline floor so perfectly polished it seemed they were walking on the void of space itself. Above, the ceiling was a transparent dome offering a view of Krillos Prime's strange sky. "Just offering biometric observations," Chip replied, its synthetic voice carrying a hint of sarcasm that shouldn't have been possible in standard diplomatic AI. "Also, you've incorrectly fastened the third closure on your formal attire. Very unprofessional." Illyra discreetly adjusted the irregularity in her midnight blue diplomatic uniform while surveying the gathering. Hundreds of delegates filled the hall, some humanoid, others utterly alien in form. The Vespulians with their insectoid bodies stood in perfect hexagonal formations. The gaseous Zul were contained in specially designed mobility spheres. The reptilian saurians towered over most other species, their scales gleaming under the crystal chandeliers. "Remember," Chip continued, the briefing specifically mentioned, "the importance of following every minute detail of Kriller protocol." "I know," Illyra finished. "Earth's first diplomatic mission to the Empire depends on not offending anyone. I've read the briefing 17 times. 18 would have been more thorough," Chip remarked. Before Illyra could respond, the ambient music, an ethereal symphony played on instruments she couldn't begin to identify, abruptly ceased. A hush fell over the enormous gathering as a section of the floor at the far end of the hall began to shimmer and rise, forming a crystalline dais. Her Imperial Majesty, Queen Seraphina VII, sovereign of the 17 systems, voice of the crystalline harmony, keeper of the eternal equilibrium, announced a Kriller official in a voice that somehow carried throughout the vast chamber without seeming to shout. The queen materialized on the dais, the air around her shimmering with what might have been technological enhancement, or simply the natural awe she commanded. Her 3 eyes surveyed the gathering with ancient intelligence, her 6 arms arranged in a traditional pose of authority. What happened next was so synchronized it seemed rehearsed, though Alara later learned it was simply instinct born of generations of conditioning. Every being in the immense hall, from the highest Kriller noble to the lowliest maintenance worker, from the proudest Saurian warlord to the most ethereal Zul diplomat, bowed in perfect, absolute silence. Hundreds of bodies of various configurations bent, lowered, or otherwise contracted in the universal gesture of submission. Every being, that is except one. Alara Vance stood tall, her eyes wide with awe at the spectacle before her. Perhaps her universal translator had malfunctioned, missing the subtle cue that preceded the collective obeisance. Perhaps she had been so overwhelmed by the scale and grandeur of the ceremony that she had momentarily forgotten the protocol she had studied. Or perhaps, as she would later claim, something in her fundamentally human nature refused to bow her head when faced with power, preferring instead to look directly at it. Whatever the reason, the contrast was stark and shocking. In a sea of bowed heads and lowered bodies, one small human figure remained upright, her eyes meeting those of the Kriller Queen. The silence, already profound, deepened into something almost tangible. Alara became aware of peripheral movement as the Kriller royal guards tightened their grips on crystalline weapons. The Queen's senior advisors, positioned closer to the throne, displayed expressions of horror and outrage that transcended species differences. "Chip," Alara whispered through barely moving lips. "What did I miss?" "Oh, nothing important," the AI responded with digital sarcasm. "Just the most sacred moment of obeisance in Kriller culture, where every sentient being acknowledges the absolute authority of the Queen. A tradition dating back approximately 4,000 years. Nothing to worry about." Alara felt her blood run cold as she realized her mistake. Her eyes darted around, considering whether to correct her error by bowing now, but instinct told her that would only compound the insult with awkwardness. The chief advisor, a tall Kriller with skin that had faded to a pale blue with age, leaned toward the Queen and whispered something urgently. The Queen raised one of her 6 hands in a subtle gesture, causing the advisor to fall silent immediately. Then, to the astonishment of everyone present, Queen Seraphina VII descended from her dais and began moving toward Alara. The crowd parted silently, still in their bowed positions, creating a direct path between the monarch and the human diplomat. The Queen's approach was unhurried, deliberate. Her multispectral eyes studied Alara with cold curiosity rather than the rage the ambassador had expected. When they were less than 2 meters apart, the Queen halted. "You stand before the crystalline throne," the Queen stated, her voice melodious, yet carrying an edge of steel. "Explain yourself, human." Alara swallowed hard, acutely aware that her response might determine not only her own fate, but potentially the future relations between Earth and the Kriller Empire. "Your Majesty," she began, "I offer my deepest apologies for any disrespect. On Earth, we have a saying that the truest respect is shown by looking directly at someone, by standing tall and acknowledging their power face to face rather than looking away." Chip let out an almost imperceptible electronic sigh at this creative interpretation of human customs. The Queen's skin shifted slightly toward purple, a change in emotional state that Alara couldn't interpret. "Fascinating," she said after a long pause. "In 10,000 years of receiving ambassadors, I have never encountered such a perspective." Her third eye narrowed slightly. "Is it the custom of all humans to show respect in this manner?" Before Alara could respond, Chip interrupted, its translation protocol activating. Her Majesty is asking if all humans are as disrespectfully clueless as you or if you're a special case. The AI's voice was clearly audible to those nearby. Alara fought the urge to rip the small device from her collar. My assistant's translation circuit appears to be malfunctioning, she said quickly. What I meant to convey is that while humans do understand the concept of bowing, our diplomatic traditions also value direct engagement. It was not my intention to offend, but to honor your presence with my full attention. For what seemed like an eternity, the Queen regarded her silently. The entire hall remained frozen, hundreds of beings still bowed, the tension mounting with each passing second. Then something unexpected happened. The corner of Queen Seraphina's mouth, a feature remarkably similar to human lips despite her alien physiology, twitched slightly upward. "How refreshing," she said. "Finally, perhaps there is value in examining our most unquestioned traditions through foreign eyes." She turned to address the still-bowed assembly. "Rise, all of you. The moment of formal recognition has passed." As the gathered diplomats and officials straightened, murmurs of confusion began to spread through the hall. The Queen's next words silenced them. "Ambassador Vance of Earth will be permitted to observe our remaining ceremonies from her preferred posture." She turned back to Alara. "I find myself curious about this federation of yours, Ambassador. Perhaps we shall speak further during your stay." With that, the Queen returned to her dais, leaving a stunned Alara in her wake. "Well," Chip muttered, "that went better than statistical probabilities would have predicted." The chief advisor, who had been watching the exchange with barely concealed horror, approached Alara as the Queen resumed her formal duties. His skin had paled to an almost white blue. "I am Chief Advisor Zarthus," he said, his voice a controlled whisper. "You have been granted extraordinary latitude by Her Majesty, but do not mistake momentary curiosity for permanent exemption from our protocols. The convergence ceremonies will continue for 14 more days. I suggest you use that time to better familiarize yourself with our customs." His third eye fixed on Alara with unmistakable suspicion before he turned and glided back to his position near the Queen. "He seems friendly," Alara muttered to Chip. "Approximately as friendly as a supernova," the AI replied. "For the record, this goes against all diplomatic best practices I've been programmed with. Standing out is rarely advantageous in first contact scenarios." "Too late now," Alara said. "Let's just try to get through the rest of this ceremony without starting an interstellar incident." As the formal proceedings continued, Alara could feel the stares of hundreds of aliens, some curious, others clearly disapproving. She had made an impression on her first day, certainly, though whether it would prove beneficial or disastrous remained to be seen. The following days brought a series of diplomatic functions that tested Alara's adaptability to its limits. Each interaction seemed to trigger yet another cultural misunderstanding that Chip would sarcastically identify moments too late to prevent. During a formal greeting ceremony with the Vespulian ambassador, Alara extended her hand for a handshake only to discover that physical contact was considered deeply inappropriate among the insectoid species. The Vespulians reproduce through spore transfer initiated by touch. Chip informed her after the ambassador had recoiled in horror. "You essentially just propositioned him in front of his entire delegation." At a cultural exhibition, Alara complimented what she thought was a beautiful art piece, only to learn it was actually a sacred funerary container holding the cremated remains of a revered Kriller philosopher. "Perhaps we should create a new diplomatic protocol," Chip suggested after that particular gaffe. "Operation Silent Observer. You stand in a corner and don't touch, speak to, or look directly at anything." Despite these stumbles, word of the human ambassador who had stood before the Queen spread throughout the Crystal Palace. Junior staff members and minor delegates began seeking Alara out, curious about this strange being who had broken the most fundamental protocol and lived to tell the tale. To Alara's surprise, on the 5th day of the Convergence celebrations, she received a formal summons to attend the Queen in her private reception chamber, an honor typically reserved for the highest-ranking ambassadors from long-standing allied worlds. This could be good, Alara mused as she prepared for the meeting. Or it could be that executions are performed privately in Kriller culture, chip-countered, just maintaining a balanced perspective. The Queen's private chamber was smaller than Alara had expected, though still impressive by human standards. Rather than the overwhelming opulence of the public spaces, this room displayed artifacts from across the empire, items that appear to hold personal rather than purely ceremonial significance. Queen Seraphina dismissed her attendants with a gesture, leaving only 2 guards positioned discreetly by the entrance. When they were relatively alone, the Queen's posture relaxed subtly. "Ambassador Vance," she began, "I have been reviewing the preliminary data on your federation. You represent a remarkably young civilization." "By Kriller standards, certainly," Alara agreed. "Our unified planetary government is less than a century old, and we've been exploring beyond our solar system for only 60 years. And yet you've established relations with 14 other species and formed a federation rather than an empire. Curious." The Queen's skin shifted toward a deeper blue. "Tell me, is your manner of respect truly a human custom, or was that a diplomatic fabrication?" Alara hesitated, sensing a test. "It was an interpretation, Your Majesty. We do have many customs of bowing and deference on Earth, but we also value the courage to stand face to face with power. I chose to emphasize the latter when I realized my mistake." To her surprise, the Queen's expression showed what might have been approval. Honesty. Interesting choice. She moved to a crystalline decanter and poured 2 glasses of an iridescent liquid. In 10,000 years of rule, the Kriller have perfected stability. Every action, every protocol, every ceremony serves to maintain the harmony of the empire. She offered 1 glass to Alara, who accepted it carefully. "But perfect stability," the Queen continued, "can become perfect stagnation without occasional disruptions." They spoke for over an hour, the conversation ranging from Earth's tumultuous history to the challenges of governing an interstellar empire. The Queen seemed particularly interested in humanity's diverse governing systems and their frequent, sometimes chaotic transitions of power. As Alara was leaving, the Queen made a request that would become the first of many. "I would like to continue these discussions, Ambassador. There is much about human perspectives that I find illuminating." Over the following weeks, these private audiences became regular occurrences. While officially framed as diplomatic briefings on Earth Federation policies, they increasingly evolved into philosophical exchanges. The 2 women, one an ancient alien monarch, the other a young human diplomat, found themselves engaged in discussions that transcended their vastly different backgrounds. "Your species embraces chaos," Seraphina observed during one such meeting. "You allow contradicting ideologies to exist simultaneously, encourage debate rather than consensus, and celebrate individualism over collective harmony. By all logical analysis, human civilization should have collapsed centuries ago. But instead we've thrived," Alara pointed out. "There's strength in our adaptability, in the collision of different viewpoints. We call it creative destruction, the idea that sometimes old structures need to break down for new growth to occur." The Queen contemplated this, a concept antithetical to Kriller philosophy. "We build to last millennia. Our laws, once established, rarely change. And has that always served your people well?" Alara asked carefully. The Queen's 3 eyes focused on her with sudden intensity. "An impertinent question, Ambassador. Just a human perspective, Your Majesty." Something like amusement flickered across the Queen's alien features. "Indeed, one I find myself increasingly willing to consider." Not everyone in the Kriller court shared the Queen's fascination with human perspectives. Chief Advisor Zarthus, in particular, regarded Alara's growing influence with undisguised alarm. A traditionalist who had served 3 successive monarchs, Zarthus saw in Alara a threat to the very foundations of Kriller society. His opposition began subtly, scheduling conflicts that prevented Alara from attending certain functions, minor protocol adjustments that she was not informed of until she had already violated them. Rumors circulated among lesser officials questioning Earth's true intentions within the Empire. "Zarthus has requested your diplomatic credentials for the 7th time," Chip informed Alara one morning. He's also circulated a comprehensive analysis of all your protocol violations to the High Council. It's quite the collection. He's even included that incident with the sacred bath salts you mistook for a dessert offering. I can handle Zarthus, Alara said with more confidence than she felt. He's just protecting traditions he values. He's systematically undermining your position, Chip corrected, and he's very good at it. 3 lesser diplomats have already reduced their contact with you, citing scheduling conflicts. Before Alara could respond, her communication panel chimed with an urgent message. A crisis had emerged on Viros 3, a Kriller colony world on the Empire's outer rim. A mysterious contagion was spreading among the crystalline flora that formed the basis of the planet's ecosystem and economy. The High Council has been convened, Chip reported after interfacing with the Palace Information System. Apparently, this blight is resistant to standard Kriller biocontainment protocols. When Alara arrived at the council chamber, she was surprised to receive an invitation to observe, another unprecedented courtesy extended at the Queen's insistence. The discussion was already underway, with various advisors presenting potential solutions. The traditional response is quarantine and purification, Zarthus was saying as Alara found a place at the back of the chamber. We must isolate Viros 3 completely, burn the affected sectors to ash, and reseed with untainted stock from the Imperial reserves. The purification process would destroy 70% of the colony's resources and displace millions of citizens, another advisor countered. Recovery would take decades. Nevertheless, it is the protocol established after the Mizar contagion of the 9th dynasty, Zarthus insisted. The procedures exist for a reason. The debate continued in circles, with most advisors reluctantly coming to agree with Zarthus's hardline approach despite its devastating costs. Throughout the discussion, Queen Seraphina remained silent, her 3 eyes occasionally drifting to where Alara stood. Finally, the Queen spoke. Ambassador Vance, your Federation has encountered similar biological crises in its expansion. What would your people do in this situation? The chamber fell silent. For a human to be directly addressed in the High Council was unprecedented. Zarthus immediately objected. Your Majesty, this is an internal matter of Imperial security. The human has no standing to. I did not ask for your assessment of my question. Chief Advisor. The Queen interrupted, her skin darkening toward indigo, a color Alara had come to recognize as indicating displeasure. I asked for the ambassador's perspective. All eyes turned to Alara, who stepped forward respectfully. On Earth, we faced similar challenges when terraforming Mars. Rather than pursuing eradication, we developed targeted phage therapy, engineered viruses that attack only the pathogen while leaving the beneficial organisms intact. She hesitated, then added, it's less absolute than purification, requiring ongoing monitoring and adaptation, but it preserves the ecosystem and allows for treatment without evacuation. Zarthus scoffed. Typical human half-measures. The Kriller way ensures complete elimination of the threat. At what cost? Alara asked before she could stop herself. Sometimes the cure can be more devastating than the disease. A ripple of murmurs spread through the council at this direct challenge. Queen Seraphina's expression remained unreadable. An interesting alternative, she said finally. Dr. Kieran, is such an approach viable with our technology? The royal scientist, a younger Kriller whose skin still held the vibrant purple of youth, looked thoughtful. It would require adapting our crystalline biotech to new parameters, but the theoretical framework is sound. We could develop a prototype within days. Proceed, the Queen ordered. Prepare both the traditional purification protocol and this phage therapy for my review. We will make a final determination once both options are fully developed. As the council adjourned, Alara could feel Zarthus's third eye boring into her. His skin had paled to an almost colorless state, a sign of extreme agitation. You overstep, human, he said quietly as she passed him. Traditions endure because they work. Your improvisations risk the harmony of an empire that stood for millennia before your species learned to make fire. I'm just offering a perspective, Chief Advisor, Ilera replied evenly. The Queen is wise enough to evaluate all options. His expression hardened. Indeed, she is. And wise enough to recognize poison, whether it comes in the form of a biological contagion or foreign influence. 3 days later, the phage therapy was deployed to Viros 3 under strict monitoring protocols. Initial results showed promising containment of the blight with minimal damage to the surrounding ecosystem. The Queen's decision to try the alternative approach was met with mixed reactions throughout the court, some praising her wisdom in exploring new solutions, others concerned about the deviation from established protocols. For Ilera, the incident marked a turning point in her relationship with the Kriller power structure. She had moved from curious anomaly to active influencer, a shift that brought both opportunity and danger. Zarthus has filed formal protests with both the Queen and the High Council regarding your interference in imperial matters, Chip informed her after accessing the Palace Information Network. He's also requested a security review of all Earth Federation communications. He's worried the Queen is listening to me, Ilera mused. He's worried she's changing, Chip corrected. For a civilization built on constancy, evolution can look like corruption. The AI's assessment proved prophetic. Over the following weeks, Ilera noticed increasing tension within the court. Conversations would halt when she entered rooms. Junior officials who had once sought her out now avoided her gaze. Security scans of her quarters became more frequent and thorough. Then came the incident at the Stellar Navigation Center. Ilera had been invited by the Queen to observe the ancient facility where Kriller ships were tracked throughout the Empire. During the tour, a critical navigation matrix suddenly failed, temporarily disrupting communication with 17 vessels, including 3 carrying vital medical supplies to Viros 3. When the systems were restored, the log showed the failure had been triggered by an access code linked to Ilera's diplomatic credentials. This is absurd, Ilera protested when confronted by security officials. I never accessed any navigation systems. An investigation revealed that the credentials were genuine, but had been activated from a terminal Ilera had never used, at a time when she was demonstrably in the Queen's presence. The evidence pointed to a sophisticated frame-up rather than actual sabotage on her part. I've analyzed the security logs, Chip told her privately. Someone with extremely high clearance created a perfect digital forgery of your credentials. This wasn't an opportunistic frame-up, it was carefully planned. Zarthus, Ilera said with certainty. Likely, but unprovable. The digital fingerprints are thoroughly obscured. The AI paused. There's something else. I've detected unusual encrypted communications between Zarthus's office and several military vessels positioned near Earth Federation space. A cold feeling settled in Ilera's stomach. He's setting up something bigger. Affirmative. This navigation incident appears to be merely the first act. Chip's voice became uncharacteristically serious. Based on the pattern of communications and resource allocations, I calculate a 78% probability that Zarthus is preparing to manufacture a crisis involving Earth that would necessitate a return to traditional Kriller isolation protocols. Or worse, Ilera said quietly, if he can convince the High Council that Earth represents a threat. The Kriller Empire has eliminated perceived threats before, Chip finished. Their historical records are quite consistent on that point. Ilera spent the night reviewing her options, none of which seemed promising. Going directly to the Queen would require evidence stronger than AI speculations and suspicious communications. Confronting Zarthus would only accelerate his plans. Contacting Earth for backup would take weeks at best, and might be intercepted and used as further evidence against her. She was still deliberating when her quarters communication panel chimed with an unexpected message, an invitation to join one of the junior technicians she had befriended in a restricted section of the palace archives. It's obviously a trap, Chip warned. Maybe, Ilera agreed. But Nari has been the one person besides the Queen who's consistently treated me well. And we need allies right now. The archival section was dimly lit and deserted at this late hour. Nari, a young Kriller whose skin still held the bright cyan of adolescence, was waiting beside a crystalline data terminal. "Ambassador," she said in a hushed voice, "I've discovered something you need to see. It's about Chief Advisor Zarthus." She activated the terminal, bringing up classified communication logs. These are records of transmissions between Zarthus and a military outpost at Proxima Station. They've been implementing something called Protocol Purity. Alara studied the data, her concern growing with each screen. The communications detailed plans for a staged attack on a Kriller research outpost using technology that would implicate Earth Federation forces. The false flag operation would provide justification for severing diplomatic ties with Earth and potentially authorizing more aggressive measures. According to this, the operation is scheduled to begin during tomorrow's culmination ceremony, Nari said. The Queen and most of the High Council will be occupied with the final rituals of the convergence, leaving Zarthus with temporary command authority over the defense grid. "We need to warn the Queen," Alara said. Nari's skin paled slightly. "That won't be easy. The culmination preparations have already begun. She's in ritual isolation until the ceremony begins, and Zarthus has positioned his most loyal guards around her chambers." "Why are you helping me?" Alara asked suddenly. "This is treason against your own chief advisor." Nari's three eyes lowered briefly. "My parent creator served in the Science Guild before Zarthus had them dismissed for suggesting reforms to the crystalline propulsion systems. Our family lost everything." She looked up, her skin rippling with emotion. "The Queen's interest in your ideas gave many of us hope that change might be possible. Zarthus wants to crush that hope." With Nari's help, Alara formulated a desperate plan. The young technician could get them access to the ceremonial preparation areas through service corridors, bypassing most of Zarthus's security. From there, they would need to somehow reach the Queen before the ceremony began, and Zarthus initiated his false flag operation. "If we're caught," Alara warned, "you'll face consequences far worse than I would." Nari's skin flushed deep blue with resolve. "Some traditions are worth breaking." They moved through the palace's hidden infrastructure, crystalline maintenance tunnels that pulsed with the living energy that powered the entire complex. Chip interfaced with the security systems, creating small distractions and false readings to keep guards looking in the wrong directions. They had nearly reached the ceremonial preparation chamber when a security alert blared through the palace. "Attention all personnel," came Zarthus's voice over the communication system. "Earth Federation forces have launched an unprovoked attack on our research station in the Proxima system. All diplomatic personnel are restricted to quarters pending investigation. Security protocols have been elevated to level 1. He's moved up his timeline, Alara realized. He knows we've discovered his plan. They increased their pace, finally reaching a service entrance to the vast preparation chamber where the Queen and her ritual attendants were making final arrangements for the culmination ceremony. Through the translucent crystal door, Alara could see Queen Seraphina surrounded by attendants applying ceremonial markings to her skin. "There are at least 6 guards in there," Nari whispered, "and we no longer have the element of surprise." "Then we'll have to make an entrance," Alara decided. "Chip, can you access the ceremonial lighting systems?" "Already done," the AI replied, "though I feel compelled to point out this plan has a projected success rate of approximately 23%. "I've beaten worse odds," Alara said. "On my signal." She took a deep breath, straightened her diplomatic uniform, and nodded to Nari. "Now!" The chamber's lights suddenly flashed in the specific pattern used to announce Imperial messengers, momentarily disorienting everyone inside. Alara pushed through the door and strode purposefully toward the Queen, projecting an authority she didn't feel. Guards moved to intercept her, weapons raised. "Ambassador Vance," the head of security barked, "you are in violation of diplomatic protocols and security directives. Stand down immediately." "Your Majesty," Alara called out, ignoring the guards, "I must speak with you urgently regarding Chief Advisor Zarthus and an operation called Protocol Purity." The Queen's 3 eyes fixed on Alara, then shifted to the approaching guards. "Stay your weapons," she commanded. The ambassador would not violate sacred preparation space without grave cause. To Alara, she said, "Speak quickly." Zarthus has fabricated an attack by Earth forces, Ilera explained rapidly. The transmission you just received is false, a pretext to sever relations with Earth and possibly initiate military action against the Federation. We have evidence in the palace archives. The head guard looked skeptical. Your Majesty, this is clearly a desperate attempt to— Silence, the Queen ordered. Her skin had darkened to a deep indigo, but her voice remained calm. These are serious accusations, Ambassador. Accusing the chief advisor of treason is not done lightly. I wouldn't do so without evidence, Ilera assured her. Nari from the technical division discovered communications outlining the entire plan. Zarthus calls it protocol purity, a return to traditional Kriller isolation by eliminating foreign influences, beginning with Earth. Before the Queen could respond, the chamber doors burst open. Zarthus entered, flanked by elite guards. His skin was almost white with agitation. His third eye narrowed to a slit. Seize the human and her Kriller accomplice, he ordered. They have conspired with Earth forces to attack our outposts and have now infiltrated the sacred preparation chamber to threaten Her Majesty. The guards hesitated, caught between conflicting authorities. I have given no such order, Chief Advisor, the Queen said, her voice ice cold. Explain yourself. Zarthus bowed formally. Forgive me, Your Majesty, but in times of crisis, the protocols of preservation grant emergency powers to the chief advisor when a monarch is indisposed by ritual obligations. I am acting to protect you and the Empire from a clear and present danger. The only danger, Ilera interjected, is your manipulation of the truth. There's no Earth attack. Chip, display the communications we discovered. The AI projected a holographic display of the incriminating logs that Nari had uncovered. These communications detail Chief Advisor Zarthus's plan to stage a false attack and blame Earth Federation forces, Chip explained. The operation was codenamed Protocol Purity. Zarthus's skin flushed with anger. Falsified data from a human AI. Your Majesty, this only proves the extent of their deception. He stepped forward. The human has clouded your judgment since she first defied our most sacred protocols. Now she seeks to turn you against your most loyal servant using fabricated evidence. The evidence is genuine. Nari spoke up, her voice trembling but determined. I discovered it. In the secure archives, accessed through Zarthus's own authorization codes. Treason from within, Zarthus hissed. This only confirms the corrupting influence of foreign ideas. He turned to the guards. I invoke the ancient right of preservation. Detain the human and her accomplices until the High Council can be convened. The guards looked to the Queen, uncertainty evident in their postures. Queen Seraphina had remained extraordinarily still during this exchange, her three eyes moving between Zarthus and Ilera. Now she stepped forward, her ceremonial robes flowing around her like liquid crystal. Chief Advisor, she said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries of authority, you speak of tradition and preservation. Yet you would usurp my authority using protocols meant only for times when a monarch is incapacitated or incompetent. Do you find me incompetent, Zarthus? The advisor bowed deeply. Never, Your Majesty. I seek only to spare you difficult decisions during the sacred culmination preparations. How considerate, the Queen remarked, her tone making it clear she saw through the pretense. And yet, I find myself quite capable of making decisions at this moment. She turned to the guards. Verify the communications that Ambassador Vance has presented. Immediately. There's no time for verification, Zarthus protested. The Earth forces could strike the homeworld at any moment. We must act decisively, as we have always done. One of the Queen's attendants, who had been quietly interfacing with the communication terminal, approached and bowed. Your Majesty, we have established direct contact with Commander Thelix at the Proximus Research Station. He reports no attack, no damage, and no sign of Earth vessels in the vicinity. Zarthus's skin paled further. Impossible. The reports were clear. The reports were yours, the Queen interrupted. Generated and disseminated on your authority alone. She turned to the head of her guard. Secure the chief advisor until a full investigation can be conducted. For a moment, it seemed Zarthus might accept his defeat with dignity. Then, with surprising speed for his age, he drew a crystalline weapon from his robes and lunged toward the queen. The Empire must be preserved, even from itself, he cried. Alara moved without thinking, intercepting Zarthus before the guards could react. They collided, the weapon discharging a burst of energy that shattered a nearby crystalline column. As they struggled, Alara found herself facing the full fury of the chief advisor. "You've poisoned her mind with your chaos," he hissed, his third eye blazing with hatred. Centuries of perfect order, threatened by one insignificant human who refused to bow. Alara managed to twist the weapon away from both of them. "It wasn't me who threatened your order," she gasped as they grappled. "It was the fear of change." The guards finally reached them, pulling Zarthus away and restraining him. His skin had taken on a mottled appearance, extreme emotional distress manifesting physically. "You've chosen dissolution over preservation," he told the queen as the guards secured him. "The Empire requires constance, not experimentation." Queen Seraphina approached him, her expression solemn. "The Empire requires wisdom to distinguish between harmful change and necessary evolution." She gestured to the guards. "Take him to the contemplation chambers. The High Council will determine his fate after the culmination." As Zarthus was led away, the queen turned to Alara, who was being helped to her feet by Nari. "It seems I am in your debt once again, Ambassador. First you brought new perspective, and now you have prevented a dangerous deception." "I was just protecting my people," Alara said, wincing slightly from a bruise forming on her shoulder. "And perhaps yours as well." The queen's multispectral eyes studied her with newfound respect. "Indeed, it appears that standing tall has its advantages." She turned to her attendants. "The culmination ceremony will proceed as planned, but with one modification. Ambassador Vance and technical specialist Nari will attend as honored guests." In the hours that followed, Alara learned that Zarthus's conspiracy extended beyond the false attack. He had been systematically undermining relations with several younger allied species, believing that the Empire's future security lay in greater isolation and adherence to traditional power structures. The culmination ceremony itself was breathtaking, a sophisticated blend of ancient ritual and advanced technology that celebrated the Kriller Empire's endurance through millennia. Thousands of crystalline sculptures throughout the palace synchronized their resonance frequencies, creating harmonies that seemed to penetrate to the cellular level. The 3 moons of Krillos Prime aligned perfectly with the binary stars, casting the entire palace in a spectral light show that defied description. Throughout it all, Alara stood tall beside Nari, the only beings present who were not Kriller nobility. The significance of their presence, especially after Zarthus's conspiracy had been exposed, was not lost on anyone in attendance. In the days following the culmination, Queen Seraphina convened the High Council to address the aftermath of Zarthus's betrayal. Alara was invited to attend, another unprecedented honor that signaled a shift in a monarchy's approach to foreign relations. "The foundations of our empire remain strong," the queen told the assembled counselors, "but recent events have demonstrated that strength need not equal rigidity. For 10,000 years, we have preserved our ways through perfect adherence to tradition. Yet the galaxy around us continues to evolve." She gestured toward Alara. Ambassador Vance's unconventional perspective, beginning with her refusal to bow during our first encounter, initially appeared as disrespect. In time, it revealed itself as an opportunity to examine our most fundamental assumptions. The council chambers filled with murmurs at this radical statement. The queen allowed the reaction to subside before continuing. Chief Advisor Zarthus believed he was protecting our empire by eliminating foreign influence. In truth, he nearly led us into unnecessary conflict because he feared ideas different from our own. Her skin shifted to a vibrant purple that Alara had rarely seen, a color associated with pronouncements of imperial significance. "Therefore, I propose the establishment of a new council, the Chamber of Diverse Perspectives, where representatives from all allied species may contribute their unique viewpoints to imperial deliberations. She turned to Alara. Ambassador Vance has agreed to serve as the first Earth representative on this council, once her credentials are formalized. The proposal was met with a mixture of enthusiasm and apprehension, but none dared openly oppose the Queen's will, especially after Zarthus's conspiracy had been exposed. The council approved the measure with the traditionally required unanimity, though Alara suspected several members had reservations they would express more privately. The phage therapy approach to the Viros 3 blight proved successful beyond initial projections, saving the colony from the devastating purification protocol that had been the traditional response. This tangible success helped quiet many of the concerns about changing long-standing practices. Over the following months, relations between the Earth Federation and the Kriller Empire strengthened considerably. Trade agreements were established, cultural exchanges initiated, and joint scientific ventures began exploring new applications that combined Earth's innovative approaches with Kriller's refined crystalline technologies. For Alara, the assignment that had begun with a diplomatic faux pas had transformed into one of the most significant breakthroughs in the Federation's history. Her unintentional defiance of protocol had opened a door to mutual understanding that formal diplomacy might never have achieved. As her initial diplomatic tour neared its end, Alara received a summons for one final private audience with Queen Seraphina. They met on a crystal balcony overlooking the capital city of Krillos Prime. The 3 moons now returned to their normal positions in the lavender sky. "Your replacement has excellent credentials," the Queen observed, "but I wonder if they will stand or bow when we first meet." Alara smiled. "Ambassador Kim has been thoroughly briefed on all protocols. I suspect she'll follow them precisely." "How disappointing," the Queen said, with what Alara had come to recognize as dry humor. "Perhaps I have developed a taste for diplomatic incidents." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the crystalline spires of the city catch the light of the setting binary stars. "When you first stood before me," Seraphina said finally, "I was curious rather than offended. In 10,000 years of rule, every being I had encountered had followed the expected patterns. You were a disruption to perfect order." "I hope it was a constructive disruption," Alara replied. "More than you know." The Queen's skin shifted through several subtle hues as she appeared to contemplate her next words. "The burden of ancient tradition is that it leaves little room for growth. Every decision I made had precedent. Every ceremony followed patterns established millennia ago. Perfect stability and perfect stagnation." She turned her 3 eyes to Alara. "Your refusal to bow forced me to look directly at something I had not examined in centuries. The possibility that our most fundamental assumptions could be questioned, that there might be strength in perspectives I had never considered. Change can be frightening," Alara acknowledged, "especially for a civilization built on continuity." "Indeed, but perhaps more frightening is the realization that, without change, even the mightiest empire eventually crystallizes into fragility." Seraphina gestured toward the city below. "Already, the Chamber of Diverse Perspectives has proposed adjustments to our educational systems, trade policies, and even ceremonial structures that would have been unthinkable a year ago. Many in the nobility are resistant, of course." "And you?" Alara asked. The Queen's skin settled into a rich, deep blue that Alara had come to associate with contentment. "I find myself invigorated. It seems there is still much to learn, even after 3 centuries of rule." From inside her robes, she produced a small crystalline object and offered it to Alara, a token of appreciation for the ambassador who would not bow. Alara accepted the gift, a miniature sculpture that captured the moment she had stood facing the Queen during their first encounter, rendered in perfect detail down to the slightly alarmed expression on her face. "To remind you," the Queen said, "that sometimes the greatest diplomatic achievements come from standing firm rather than bending." The next morning, Alara boarded the Earth vessel that would begin her journey home. Nari, now serving as a junior advisor in the newly formed Chamber of Diverse Perspectives, came to see her off, along with several Kriller officials who had once regarded her with suspicion but now showed genuine respect. Chip has analyzed the probability of another human ambassador creating an interstellar incident within their first 5 minutes at court, Nari told her with the Kriller equivalent of a smile. The calculation suggests it's highly unlikely. You've set a unique precedent. I'll take that as a compliment, Ilera laughed. Take care of the chamber. It's a fragile new growth in very old soil. It will thrive, Nari assured her, her skin flushing with determination. The Queen has personally guaranteed its protection, and many younger Krillers see it as the future. As her ship lifted off from the crystalline spaceport, Ilera watched the magnificent structures of Krillo's prime recede. The ancient empire would continue, its traditions largely intact, but with a new openness to perspectives beyond its borders. Well, Chip commented as they broke orbit. According to my metrics, this mission was a qualified success. 1 major protocol violation, 3 diplomatic incidents, an attempted coup, and the fundamental restructuring of an empire's approach to foreign relations. Not exactly by the diplomatic handbook. Ilera smiled, holding the crystal sculpture the Queen had given her. Sometimes the handbook needs revision. From the viewport, she could see Queen Seraphina's palace glinting in the light of the binary stars, still imposing, still magnificent, but perhaps a little less rigid than before. All because one human had stood tall when everyone else bowed. As her ship activated its FTL drive and the stars blurred around them, Ilera thought about the traditions and assumptions that shaped every civilization, including her own. Perhaps the true art of diplomacy wasn't perfect adherence to protocol, but knowing when to stand firm and when to bend, and having the wisdom to recognize the difference. Setting course for Earth, the ship's navigation system announced. "Take us home," Ilera replied, already composing in her mind the most unusual diplomatic report the Federation had ever received. The story of how a diplomatic error had opened the door to understanding, and how sometimes the greatest respect wasn't shown by bowing one's head, but by standing tall and looking directly at the truth.